What is a website everyone should know about? Guerrilla Mail. https://www.guerrillamail.com/. Provides throwaway emails from multiple domains. openculture.com. https://openculture.com. Free online courses, books, media, etc. ilovepdf.com. Anything you need to do to PDFs. All free. Camel.com. Checks the price history of an item on Amazon so you know if it's a true deal or whether or not it just says deal but is at its normal price. Downdetector.com. It would save so many posts on social media. Is anyone else having problems on blah blah blah? I can't get onto this site. Is it down? Does anyone know if blah blah is having issues? Quote. z-lib.org and gutenberg.org for books you might need to read for school. They usually are downloaded in an EPUB file by default. So use a site like convertio.co to convert them to PDF. Edit. Someone else mentioned these sites as well that are useful for students. https://speedwrite.com. https wordbeelst.com. UTM_campaign equals speedwrite homepage. What historical fact does no one like to talk about? During the Battle of Waterloo, one of the most treasured pieces of loot was the teeth of the deceased soldiers. Approximately 200 years ago, it was rather common to use the teeth of dead people in the creation of dentures. The Second Congo War. This was the deadliest conflict since World War II with over 5 million people killed. Most people have never heard of it despite it ending less than 20 years ago. Between the 1930s and the 1970s, about one-third of the female population of Puerto Rico was sterilized. The emergency powers granted after 9/11 are still being renewed. During the Nuremberg trials post-World War II, head of the Nazi Navy, and head of state after Hitler's death, Karl Donitz, was charged with war crimes involving his use of unrestricted submarine warfare and killing of unarmed civilian ships. Donitz provided evidence that nearly all the ships he attacked were in fact armed with anti-submarine weapons and radios, and also a large amount of evidence that the United States committed the exact same war crimes against the Japanese. Due to this, those charges were dropped and he served only 10 years in prison before being set free. 20 to 30 million people died because a Chinese guy proclaimed himself the brother of Jesus Christ. What is an unfortunate reality with work from home nobody talks about? Work from home can easily become live at work. When you work from home, people assume you have the day off. Can you do? No. I'm working. Just because I'm here working on the computer doesn't mean I can do your thing. Pay no attention to the fact that I'm browsing Reddit. It's part of my process. When you and your partner both work from home, you miss that natural separation of your lives. Suddenly you have much less to talk about, because you're living your lives together more than previously, and then takes more active effort to maintain individuality and not regress into the singular relationship entity in all aspects of life, which isn't healthy for anyone. Working through what would have been sick days. My wife works from home and it seems like a very sedentary lifestyle. Sometimes she doesn't even have to get dressed. I don't know. It just seems like if you're already anxious or depressed, you can accidentally become a shut-in. I'm missing out on a lot of accidental exercise. I used to walk to the train station, then from the station at the far end to the office, have a wander around at lunch. Now, I walk from my bed to the shower, and from the shower to my office, man cave. If I had a Fitbit, it may get as high as 50 steps by lunch. What would 10-year-old you never believe about adult you? That $100 is not that much money. That 35-year-old me bought the Ninja Turtles arcade cabinet of my 10-year-old self's dreams. I don't talk to anybody I knew when I was 10. It's like they don't even exist anymore. Paid to climb trees. Not grounded if I climb too high up. I don't eat candy all day. All the video games I have but the lack of time to play them. Alas, we weep. What celebrity or public figure would you not be surprised to find out had been an alien all along? Tommy Wiseau for obvious reasons. Tilda Swinton. Jeff Goldblum. He's from a planet of friendly and curious people. Benedict Cumberbatch. Bezos and Zuck came from the same planet together. Zuck's skin suit just fits worse. Kenneth Copeland. I would put more money on a demon in disguise. But an alien running human morality tests would make just as much sense. Serious. Friends of psychopaths, sociopaths. How did you realize your friend wasn't normal? Attention. Serious. Tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted. https www.reddit.com/r/askreddit/wiki/index-wiki_rule_6- in asterisk any asterisk comment. Parent or child. Asterisk parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Asterisk report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour. And posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot. And this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit. Message, compose, to equals, r, AskReddit. If you have any questions or concerns. He could not comprehend the difference between harmless pranks and cruelty, which manifested in high school. Got so far that he broke into a friend's home, stole her TV, then got angry that her family called the police over a prank. Trying to talk to him about the difference between pranks and crime was met by a blank stare. Almost confusion, followed by vicious mocking. I didn't see him much after that. Then completely cut ties with him after he started casually talking about raping women. He was very open with it. That guy was genuinely helpful. What he seemed to fear the most was to regress into a helpless person who couldn't fit into society. Like the psychopaths that go in and out of jail. So, he made it a habit or a challenge to help at least one person with something every day with no strings attached. Friends or strangers. As practice. To hold himself accountable. It was a bit weird. And he was kinda weird too. But he was open about it in advance so that he'd have a harder time screwing us over if ever he had a relapse in willpower. It was definitely a bit of an ego thing. I think. He liked the role of being a nice, friendly person who overcame his shortcomings. I hope he really did. I know his motivation was a bit unusual. But I've never met someone as helpful as that guy. He wasn't afraid of anything. He'd do dangerous stuff like remove wasp nests from his neighbor's porch as casually as he'd help an old lady carry her groceries to her car. Cool dude. With some crazy stories. There were lots of red flags. He was definitely closeted bi. Which is fine. But his behavior wasn't. The main red flag is that he had a slew of ruined relationships in his wake. He was a college theater professor and had a pattern of behavior in which he would identify young men in the department who were emotionally vulnerable. often who'd had recent girl trouble and or had no current male role model, father figure. Many of them had issues with their dads or their dads were deceased. He would then start spending time with them and love bombing them until they thought they were his best friend. He fed on adoration. I don't even think he exploited all these guys for sex. Though he probably did some. He just got off on people adoring him. When they started showing interest in other people, he'd go hard on the discard. There was a pattern of subtly putting these guys down and then building them up so they were conditioned to please him. If he got bored, he threw them aside. He once told me he viewed all his interactions with people through a caricature he created of them. For example, a black friend of ours was the loud black woman. Another friend who'd lost his dad recently and suffering severe depression was Eeyore. He was incapable of self-reflection. If he knew he'd upset you, he'd apologize. But it was always empty. He could not reflect on his actions and actually accept accountability for wrongdoing. He was a budding alcoholic and would attend lectures and rehearsals drunk. Then laugh about it later like it was some kind of inside joke. He was a liar. The man was pushing 40 trying to convince these college-aged men he was in his late 20s so they'd hang out with him. He didn't care about your boundaries. At his house he'd regularly expose himself, as a joke, and acted confused when I didn't find it funny. As one of these guys he love-bombed and emotionally manipulated. I eventually wised up and realized that my relationship with him was not healthy. And that it was not acceptable for him to have the emotional relationships he was having with his fucking 19 to 20-year-old students. I cut ties and he went from love-bombing to resentment so fast. Later on, my wife and I were visiting some friends who were also friends with him. They'd known him longer than we ever did, and let him stay in their guest room for months when he lost his living arrangements during COVID. They eventually kicked him out and cut ties too. Then they told us they had recently run into a former high school classmate of his who said, "I'm so glad you got away from him. There is something wrong with him. He's dangerous." She let me read a written complaint from someone who claimed to have been bullied by her. It was very detailed. Too detailed to be made up. But she denied all of it and played innocent. She showed it to me to gain my support against the accusations. A few months later she started bullying me with the exact same methods described in the complaint. When I, age 21, 1989, walked into the hallway in our shared house and saw him playing the electric piano. He had a photo of the girl he'd been dating in front of him and was badly playing mournful-sounding music. "Bad breakup?" I said. And he explained to me in careful detail how she had accused him of being a feeling-less monster. Because he was unmoved by some minor tragedy. I forgot precisely what. He proceeded to tell me she was right. He didn't care and couldn't make himself. He didn't take joy in the other person's suffering. He just wasn't moved. So the piano and photo were an attempt to fit in with the rest of you. See, if I'm doing this, I'm acting like a person with feelings. And people will like me better. I did the 1989 version of Weird Flex but okay. And he evidently decided that meant I was cool with his lack of feelings. And he'd come to me every week or so with some situation coming up in his life and ask me how I thought a person with feelings would react. He eventually got pretty good at this. He called it putting on the human mask. People he met after this generally accepted him as a functioning human. We've been friends ever since. He's very successful as a financial manager of some kind. Because emotion doesn't enter into his decisions. He's married, has a couple of cute kids, who he sees as mostly gibbering animals. But sometimes they think his wife seems happy. But he rescued her from some really toxic situation. so she might figure she's better off. And to the best of my knowledge she has no idea his humanity is a mask. He still talks to me every time her birthday or their anniversary or Christmas comes near. And runs gift suggestions by me. He's totally intelligent enough to see that the stock, cliché gifts are the wrong choice. But doesn't have the perspective to be able to put himself in his wife's shoes and see what she'd want. I'm pretty good at it, judging from the reactions she has to his gifts.
Subscribe, my brothers.